Okay, let's jump right in. Just this August, you saw the spotlight fall hard on Washington, D.C. President Trump deployed, what was it, 800 National Guard troops.
That's right, 800, citing rising crime rates there.
And, this wasn't just about D.C., was it? It felt like a signal, part of a bigger strategy.
Yeah.
He's openly talked about federalizing the Guard for other cities.
Yeah, he has. He called Chicago a mess, mentioned the incompetent mayor, and even specifically talked about New Orleans needing to straighten out a very nice section of this country.
Right. And then, boom, just this September, those leaked Pentagon documents surface. A draft proposal planning to send 1,000 Louisiana National Guard troops into places like New Orleans, Baton Rouge.
Mm-hmm. And the Pentagon, well, they were quick to call them planning documents, standard procedure perhaps.
Maybe, but the intent written right in them. To supplement local law enforcement, to tackle what they see as, widespread disorder. These feel like pretty aggressive moves.
They absolutely are, especially when you hear local leaders say in New Orleans, arguing they're seeing their lowest crime rates in decades.
Exactly. So it really sets up this dramatic clash, doesn't it? Federal power pushing one way, local control pushing back. High stakes.
It really does. And what's fascinating here, and you see this in the source material, is that this isn't just reacting on the fly. This approach, it seems to align pretty directly with conservative principles, law and order.
And things like Project 2025.
Precisely, from the Heritage Foundation. That project specifically recommends deploying the U.S. Armed Forces for domestic law enforcement. So what we're seeing might not just be about current crime stats, but part of a strategic vision, using federal power to ensure stability nationwide.
Okay, so today let's try and cut through that noise. Our deep dive is all about examining how this executive power is being used, or potentially used, to restore order in cities.
Yeah.
And what forces are driving this shift. You sent over a stack of stuff, Heritage Foundation reports, Newsweek articles, legal analyses, timelines. A lot to unpack.
Yeah, quite a bit.
So our mission is to pull out the key insights. How presidential authority, this conservative policy push, and public feeling all intersect when these big decisions get made. Is this just like a temporary thing or something bigger, more planned?
That really is the core question, isn't it? There's a strong ideological underpinning here. You can see in the sources a proactive conservative effort to reshape federal power. To step in, basically, where they feel local control is failing.
Especially concerning crime.
Exactly. It's rooted in this belief in strong executive action as the answer when local efforts seem insufficient and crime rates become a major concern. It frames federal strength not just as an option, but maybe as a core duty for domestic stability.
Okay, let's get into that blueprint then, because this is where it gets really interesting. At the center of a lot of this, as your sources show, is the Heritage Foundation. Big D.C. right-wing think tank.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not just reacting, right? They seem to be actively trying to shape what governance and security look like down the road. Their big thing, Project 2025, which you mentioned published April 2023, this isn't some brief memo, it's huge, like almost 1,000 pages. A detailed plan to reshape the federal government.
It's incredibly comprehensive.
And the goal seems clear. Consolidate executive power, a lot of it. Yeah. Make it easier for a future administration to push through right-wing policies quickly. Part of that involves replacing career federal employees
Service,
with political loyalists and taking more direct partisan control of agencies like the DOJ, the FBI. They explicitly talk about dismantling what they call an unaccountable and mostly liberal bureaucracy.
Which tells you how they view the existing structure as an obstacle. So the question then becomes, what's the specific piece in Project 2025 about domestic security?
Right. What does it actually say?
It explicitly calls for, and this is the quote, deploying the U.S. Armed Forces for domestic law enforcement. It's not subtle. It's a policy blueprint. Reflects that core law and order idea. Use federal muscle for internal threats. Restore public safety, especially when local authorities are seen as not cutting it.
And it feels very systematic, planned out, not just a reaction.
Exactly. It differentiates it from, ad hoc responses we might have seen before. It's about laying the groundwork.
And Heritage has done this kind of thing before, right? They have a history of influence.
Yeah.
That 1981 Mandate for Leadership report.
Hugely influential for the Reagan administration. Something like 60% of its recommendations were acted on in the first year. That's significant impact.
Wow. And more recently, after 2016.
Well, the sources note at least 66 Heritage people, employees, or alumni ended up in the Trump administration. It shows a direct pipeline from think tank ideas to government personnel and policy.
So the blueprint can definitely become reality. Okay, so bearing that conservative blueprint in mind, what about the actual power to deploy troops inside the U.S.? It's not simple, is it?
Not at all. It really depends where.
Like Washington, D.C., you mentioned that earlier.
Right. D.C. is unique. It's a federal district. The president has full direct authority over its National Guard. No governor to consult.
So that August deployment of 800 troops taking emergency control of the police there, that was legally sound.
Pretty much, yeah. Because of D.C.'s unique status, it sets a precedent for decisive action when it's direct federal turf.
But step outside D.C. into one of the states, totally different ballgame.
Oh, yeah. Much more complex. You run smack into the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878.
The one that generally restricts using the military for civilian law enforcement.
Exactly. It reflects that deep-seated American idea, that mixing military and civilian policing could be a threat to liberty. It came out of Reconstruction, concerns about federal troops being used domestically. It's the main legal hurdle.
So how do presidents get around that if they feel they need to?
Well, there are exceptions, big ones. The Insurrection Act is key. It's actually older than Posse Comitatus.
And that'll...
It allows the president to federalize the National Guard, or even use active duty troops in really specific situations, like massive riots a state can't handle, or needing to enforce federal law or rights.
And the courts usually back off once it's invoked.
Historically, they've given presidents pretty broad discretion once the act is invoked, especially if there's clear evidence of major civil unrest or, say, danger to federal officials. It provides crucial flexibility in extreme cases.
Okay, so the Insurrection Act is one path. What else?
There's Section 12406 of Title 10 that lets the president deploy troops to protect federal assets or property.
Like the example in Los Angeles you shared. Immigration policy, even though the governor objected.
Precisely. And under Title 10, those Guard members are fully federalized. Direct federal command. Bypasses the state completely.
Got it. Title 10 is full federal control. Then there's Title 32.
Ah, yes, Title 32.
Yeah.
This one's often called a hybrid. Or, well, critics might call it a loophole.
Why a loophole?
Because under Title 32, the Guard members technically stay under state command. The governor is still nominally in charge. But, crucially, the mission is federally funded, often federally directed or regulated.
So they can support law enforcement?
Without technically violating Posse Comitatus, because they aren't federal troops in the same way as Title 10. Critics say it lets the feds pursue their goals without full federalization. Proponents say it's a flexible tool for necessary support.
Okay, interesting distinctions. And we're seeing these play out now, right? Just this September, President Trump announced sending Guard troops to Memphis.
And he's eyeing Chicago, New Orleans, too.
He explicitly said, Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry wants us to come in.
And straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quite bad. Yeah.
It really shows that pattern, doesn't it? Presidential action aimed at crime, often in democratic cities where, from his perspective, local leaders aren't getting the job done, connects the policy ideas to real-world action.
It does. It links the broader strategy to specific interventions.
But, predictably, this kind of bold federal move doesn't just happen quietly. There's pushback.
Oh, absolutely. Strong opposition often comes from state and local leaders, especially if they're from the other party.
Like Governor Pritzker in Illinois, rejecting the comments about Chicago, saying there is no emergency that warrants federalizing his guard.
Exactly. And Chicago's mayor, Brandon Johnson, went even further, signing an executive order specifically to try and resist a potential federal takeover. That's not just talk, it's official action.
And it's not just politicians. You mentioned some residents in Shreveport, Louisiana, seeing a potential deployment as more of a political stunt than real crime fighting.
Right. Which highlights this fundamental disagreement. Are these deployments effective crime tools, or are they more about a show of federal power, maybe distracting from other issues? That perception gap is a real hurdle.
And that political resistance quickly becomes legal resistance, I imagine.
Almost immediately. Deployments without a governor's okay are pretty much guaranteed to face, as the sources say, many legal challenges.
We saw that in California, right? Governor Newsom sued over that L.A. deployment.
He did, alleging violations of Posse Comitatus. And, significantly, a federal judge recently ruled that Trump's deployment did violate the law in that instance. That's a big deal.
So the courts might be skeptical.
Legal analysts warn that using troops for, quote, ordinary street crime stuff that doesn't involve, say, mass violence or a situation totally out of control courts are likely to view that with skepticism. It suggests a judicial check on executive power in these cases.
And the core legal argument against it often comes down to.
State sovereignty. The basic idea is that the federal government generally doesn't have the authority to police local crime within a state. That's the state's job.
Even under the Insurrection Act.
Even then, the argument goes, the troops could only enforce federal laws, not the day-to-day state and local laws that deal with most street crime. This legal framework, this division of power, can really frustrate attempts at a unified, top-down federal law and order strategy. It's fundamental federalism.
Right. Which ties into those conflicting narratives about crime itself. The federal justification often paints a picture of crisis, soaring crime.
A sense of urgency.
But then local officials push back hard, like Congressman Troy Carter Sr. in New Orleans, saying, wait a minute, we're experiencing the lowest crime rates in decades. Homicides are trending down.
Exactly. That disconnect is huge. You have these competing urban crime narratives. They're not just about stats. They're deeply political, and they make federal action much harder to justify locally and can erode trust.
So pulling this together, what this deep dive seems to show is a pretty clear conservative strategy taking shape, using federal executive power for law and order, stepping in where local government is seen as failing.
Yeah, and Project 2025 looks like the detailed playbook for that strategy.
And recent actions, D.C., Memphis, the talk about Louisiana, Chicago, they look like that playbook being put into action, a commitment to a strong, centralized approach to crime.
Absolutely. And if you zoom out, connect it to the bigger picture, this whole situation highlights this fundamental, ongoing debate in America about federal power versus state power, and about the role of the military in domestic affairs.
The civil-military relations piece.
Exactly. Critics warn it could be corrosive to democracy if having troops on city streets becomes normalized. Undermining civilian police, blurring lines, they ask, where does it stop?
But the other side sees it differently.
Right. Proponents argue it's a necessary step, that ensuring public safety is a core national interest and a strong executive needs to act, especially if local efforts seem inadequate. They see it as protecting citizens, maintaining order.
So it really forces a tough question on us, on you listening. How do we balance that need for order, for strong leadership, with America's deep belief in personal liberty and local control?
That's the crux of it. The path forward looks like more legal fights, more political clashes, and a real battle over public perception about the federal government's role in our cities. It strikes at the very heart of our federal system.
Wow. It's definitely been an eye-opening deep dive. Really complex, often contentious stuff, this whole area is federal intervention and domestic security. We've gone from think tank blueprints like Project 2025
from heritage
to seeing how presidential actions are trying to put those ideas into practice right now. And you've heard about the legal tools involved, D.C.'s special status, the Insurrection Act, that Title 32 loophole or hybrid approach.
all those mechanisms.
And just as importantly, the pushback, the political fights, the court challenges from state and local leaders defending their turf. It really highlights that constant tension, doesn't it? Federal power versus state power in the U.S.
It really does. And it leaves us with this critical question moving forward. We have these heightened concerns about public safety, right? And very different views on how well local governments are handling things. So will this push for more federal executive power in law enforcement, driven by conservative principles, become sort of the new normal, a way to ensure stability nationwide? Or will those constitutional lines, that strong American value of local autonomy, ultimately hold firm, maybe even push back harder? It's a fundamental tension. It's going to keep shaping our national conversation, and however it resolves, it's going to affect everyone.
That is a powerful thought to chew on. We really hope this deep dive gave you, our listener, a clearer picture of all the forces in play and maybe a better sense of what could be coming next for our cities and for the country.